10 years ago, I saved a drowning boy. I conducted a rapid rescue on him. After waking up, he told me, "I have decided to marry you when I grow up." Thinking that he was joking, I didn't take his words seriously. 10 years later, the boy grew up, becoming a crazy and domineering CEO, whose name was Brian Hawk. At my wedding with my fiancé, he led a group of people and beat up my fiancé, forcibly taking me away. "I told you I would marry you. Your husband can only be me." He threatened me with my whole family's lives and forced me to marry him. He imprisoned me in a private villa, allowing no man to be in touch with me. To win me over, he tried every means, but I remained unmoved. He became furious and found someone who was 90% like me to replace me. Relying on his affection and favoritism, the substitute, Ariel Berg, did whatever she wanted and broke into the villa where I lived. Where did this cheap woman come from? How dare she pretend to be me and seduce my man? "I will tear you apart today." She stripped me naked, cut off my tongue, and ordered the bodyguards to ravage and humiliate me. Only after I was tortured to death did Brian arrive late. Ariel dragged my body to the front of Brian, who was overbearing. She proudly said, "Darling, this woman who had done plastic surgery wanted to hide here and seduce you. I killed her for you." Brian Hawk was infatuated and crazy. According to him, right from the moment I saved him, he decided to marry no one else but me. To win me over, he imprisoned me for 3 years and tried every means to please me every day. But I, who didn't love him at all, couldn't accept him. Recently, he got a substitute who looked like me. The two of them had been getting along affectionately for several months. To provoke me, Brian often forwarded me videos showing how ambiguous they were on WhatsApp. As I was sitting in the courtyard and enjoying their videos, there was a sudden burst of noise outside. "Brian comes here every few days. Today, I want to see what kind of treasures are hidden in this villa." But didn't Mr. Hawk say that this villa was his private restricted area, and no one was allowed to come here? "Yes, Ariel, I heard that someone took a glance inside the villa before." Mr. Hawk broke his hands and dug out his eyes. "Isn't it inappropriate for us to sneak in without his permission? What are you afraid of? Brian dotes on me to the bone. He won't blame me." Listening to the noisy sound outside the courtyard, I frowned slightly and felt uneasy. I knew better than anyone about how crazy Brian was. He had strong possessiveness, treating me as his private possession and imprisoning me in this villa. Someone once had sneaked into my villa out of curiosity and taken a glance at me. Brian disabled his hands and feet, digging out his eyes. The next day, the man vanished into the void. At first, he was only jealous of other men. Later, he realized that I, who had never been gentle to him, treated the housemaid gently. He dismissed all the housemaids in a fit of anger. He would rather personally deliver daily meals to me than let anyone else do it. Except him, no one else could look at me in my eyes for a moment. If those people outside the courtyard come in, they may be in big trouble. I quickly got up and intended to remind them to leave here as soon as possible. As soon as the door opened, someone who looked almost the same as me came into my view. Before I could say something, she slapped me hard across my face. Where did this cheap woman come from? How dare she disguise herself as me and hide in Brian's villa? "Do you want to compete with me for a man?" She hit me with a sudden slap, making my face burn with pain. "You cheap woman who did plastic surgery. Do you know where you are? How dare you barge in here without the owner's permission? You deliberately made yourself look like Ariel to seduce Mr. Hawk. You let go of your dignity to climb up the ladder, right?" At this moment, I finally realized that the person who had suddenly come in and attacked me was Ariel Berg, the substitute Brian had found. Because of Brian's pathological desire for control, I had always been indifferent towards him. Even though I was forced to marry him, I treated him indifferently. I never let him touch me. Perhaps out of resentment, or to make up for his regrets, he searched everywhere for someone who resembled Ariel Berg, the substitute he had found, who resembled me the most. At this moment, Ariel, looking furious, glared at me with overwhelming resentment. "You slut. You know that Brian is hopelessly in love with me, so you try every means to make yourself look like me. You want to replace me as my double, don't you?" Ariel was arrogant and flamboyant. Since she doesn't know the truth, I don't intend to argue with her about why she slapped me. Instead, I kindly advised her. "You shouldn't be here. Before Brian arrives, leave here quickly. Otherwise, no one can help you." However, Ariel didn't appreciate my kindness at all. Instead, she grabbed my hair angrily and said, "Brian is my man. I can wander around everywhere in his territory. You're planning to drive me away. After all, you're afraid that I, the rightful owner, will ruin your scheme and leave you with no chance to be a mistress, right? Today, I will make you know the consequences of stealing my man." After saying that, Ariel kicked me to the ground. I stumbled onto the rocks. My forehead instantly cracked open. I touched the blood on my forehead and looked at the imposing Ariel. I said indifferently, "Aren't you afraid that Brian will find out about your reckless behavior?" Ariel sneered disdainfully. "I am the destined love that Brian has been searching for a long time. Even if I have a little scratch on my face, he will be so worried about me and make himself restless for a few days. Even if he knows about what I did, so what? Will he blame me because of you, an insignificant person?" Several of Ariel's friends sneered and echoed exactly. Everyone knows that Mr. Hawk fell in love with Ariel at first sight. How can you, her imitator, who did plastic surgery, compare to her? Ariel, with Mr. Hawk's distinguished identity, there must be many seductive women like this bitch trying to seduce him. Today, we happen to make her an example and scare them off. Then we can cut off the crooked thoughts of those seductive bitches. Yes, we will let those despicable women, who want to climb the social ladder, know who the real Mrs. Hawk is. All of them spoke sharp words and looked fierce. They were eager to tear me apart. I looked serious and indifferently said, "You'd better ask Brian to find out who I am." Ariel raised her chin and looked disdainful. "Do you, a plastic surgery woman who sneaked into the villa, deserve me to inquire about your identity? I am Brian's favorite. The Berg family is the biggest partner of the Hawk family. Who the hell are you? Are you qualified to show off your status against mine?" As she said this, she looked fierce and ordered several of her best friends behind her. "Strip this bitch naked. I want to see if she can make her body look exactly like mine." Hearing this, her best friends immediately rushed over and violently tore off my clothes. While I was desperately preventing them from stripping me, I shouted, "Stop it. I am Brian's wife." Hearing what I said, they immediately stopped what they were doing. Ariel stood aside, squinting at me. "You said you were Brian's wife?" I said seriously, "Yes, you are a substitute he found. If he knows that you hurt me like this, he will not let you go." I thought that Ariel would retreat after I revealed the truth. Unexpectedly, they burst into laughter almost at the same time. This bitch. Is she that eager to take my place? Relying on the fact that she looks somewhat similar to Ariel, she dares to say that Ariel is her substitute? Everyone knows that Mr. Hawk always takes Ariel with him wherever he goes. You, a sneaky plastic surgery woman, dare to call yourself Mr. Hawk's wife. On the other hand, Ariel smiled viciously. "I thought you would be something. After all, you disguise yourself as me to seduce Brian. I didn't expect you to be a brainless idiot. I've been with Brian for so long. I didn't even know he had a wife. Are you that bold? How dare you tell such an outrageous lie? If you were the real Mrs. Hawk, how could you live alone in this desolate villa without anyone knowing it?" After saying that, Ariel snorted and ordered her several girlfriends, "Continue to strip her clothes. Leave nothing behind." Upon hearing this, her best friends did not hesitate as they violently tore off my clothes. None of them knew the reason why no one was around this villa. Brian bought all this large piece of land. No one can come here without his permission. Originally, bodyguards and maids were living here. Because of Brian's jealousy, he dismissed everyone. He doesn't announce my identity to the public so that others won't take an extra glance at me. Even if they are discussing things related to me, he will feel it's blasphemy against me. I never expected that all Brian had done to me would become the reason why they had doubts about my identity. Seeing my clothes being torn to pieces, I panicked and shouted, "I am Brian's wife. If you don't believe me, call him." After hearing what I said, they became even fiercer. They didn't stop what they were doing. While tearing off my clothes frantically, they slapped me in the face. "You damn bitch. Do you dare to lie? Let's see how we will wake you up today." Soon, my face turned red and swollen. I was disheveled. With my clothes barely covering me, a lot of skin on my body was exposed. Seeing this, Ariel narrowed her eyes and said gently, "This bitch's hair is too annoying. It's hindering her from showing off her body." As she said that, she revealed an evil smile and took out a lighter. She set my hair on fire. The fire quickly spread on my head. An intense burning sensation engulfed me. For a moment, my cheeks, ears, and entire scalp felt a burst of strong burning pain. The pain was unbearable. I instinctively tried to pat out the fire with my hands, but they firmly held me down. In the blink of an eye, my hair was all burned. My scalp was covered in burn marks. At my look, Ariel laughed with satisfaction. "It's funny. With your bald and ugly face, how are you going to seduce men in the future?" Her several close friends laughed and applauded. I stared at them, trembling all over. Then I shouted, "You will regret this. Brian threatened me with the lives of my entire family. I had been imprisoned for many years. I stayed at the empty villa in a daze day after day. It made me even more frustrated. Now, I had to endure Ariel's torment. The anger in my heart instantly turned into intense hatred. Ariel walked up to me and stepped heavily on my face with her foot. "How dare you challenge me? Since what you say will always displease me, you shouldn't speak anymore. Cut off this bitch's tongue." With her command, one of Ariel's bodyguards behind her walked towards me with a dagger in his hands. Seeing this, one of Ariel's best friends who was timid, said fumblingly, "Ariel, this is Mr. Hawk's territory after all. Is it appropriate for us to make such a big scene?" Ariel said without hesitation, "What's wrong? Brian is my man. His house is my house. I'm just educating a shameless bitch in my home. Who dares to say anything to me? Besides, Brian loves me so much. Even if I kill this bitch, he won't frown at me." Her other girlfriends echoed, "That's right. Ariel is Mr. Hawk's most beloved woman. There's nothing she can't do." When the time comes, Mr. Hawk will only feel sorry for Ariel for exhausting herself from dealing with the bitch. Hearing their words, the timid girl no longer had any concerns. She watched the show with peace of mind. I lay on the ground, watching the dagger in the bodyguard's hands. He was getting closer and closer to me. I was extremely frightened, shouting in panic, I am indeed Brian's wife. If you do this, Brian will never let you go. However, my threats had no effect. The bodyguard came to me and extended a dagger towards me. I wanted to escape, but several of Ariel's best friends firmly held me down. I wanted to hide, but the dagger, shining with cold light, had deeply cut into my mouth. The bodyguard lifted his hand and stabbed at me with the dagger. In a daze, I saw a large amount of blood and my severed tongue falling from my mouth. The pain was extreme. I felt like all the nerves in my body were severed. I was about to faint. I was like a pile of mud, lying in a pool of blood. I couldn't move, and my breath was weak. Ariel stood with her arms crossed, looking down at me. She said, even though you had plastic surgery to make yourself look like me, with your appearance, Brian would never take you seriously. He loves me as a person. Got it? Not everyone can live such a good life as me. Brian won't fall in love with any woman. Since you, a bitch, are so desperate for a man, I'll reward you with a few men. After saying that, she looked at the several bodyguards behind her. She said indifferently, I'll give this bitch to you to play with. Whoever works the hardest on her, I'll reward them with $2 million. At Ariel's words, the bodyguards' eyes instantly lit up. They rubbed their hands eagerly and fiercely, planning to pounce on me. I collapsed on the ground without any strength to resist. I wanted to shout, but I had no tongue. My mouth was full of blood. I couldn't make a sound. I could only let them ravage me. Brian imprisoned me here obsessively. But he had never hurt me or touched me. Even if I didn't want to get close to him, he never forced himself on me. He said he would wait for the day when I was willing to give myself to him. He said I was destined to be his in this lifetime. But now, I was overwhelmed by a group of bodyguards. I was helpless. Helplessness and despair engulfed me. I couldn't speak, crying uncontrollably. Brian, is this the result you want? A few of Ariel's best friends watched the show and praised Ariel. They said, Ariel is destined to be Mrs. Hawk. She is good at teaching others a lesson. Yes. See? This despicable woman was stubborn at first, but now she is made to cry. It's funny. She probably won't dare to seduce men anymore in the future. Congratulations to Ariel for successfully getting rid of a despicable bitch. Let's see who dares to compete with you for the position of Mrs. Hawk in the future. Ariel smiled victoriously and proudly as they praised her. The excited bodyguards suddenly looked strange. The next moment, a bodyguard stood up and pointed at me. He reported saying, Miss Berg, this woman is dead. Hearing this, Ariel frowned and looked disgusted. How unlucky. Bury her somewhere quickly in case she will stink Brian's eyes. As soon as she finished speaking, Brian walked into the courtyard. What are you doing? When Brian spoke, everyone on the scene turned to look at him. He was wearing a high-end custom suit. With a pair of black-rimmed glasses, he looked resolute. As soon as Ariel saw him, she, who had been arrogant, instantly became gentle and obedient. Smiling delicately, she approached Brian and said gently, Brian, aren't you in an emergency meeting? Why do you have time to come here? Brian ignored Ariel's question and asked, Don't you know that I strictly forbade anyone to enter this villa? What are you doing here? Brian's voice was devoid of any emotion, but his crystal-clear eyes reflected a burst of chilling sharpness. When Ariel met Brian's gaze, she shivered involuntarily. Brian, I saw a suspicious plastic surgery woman sneaking into the villa, so I followed her here to catch her. Hearing this, Brian frowned slightly and turned to look into the villa. Did you go inside? Ariel immediately waved her hand. No. We were teaching a woman, who had undergone plastic surgery, in the yard. Several of Ariel's best friends quickly agreed, sensing that something was not quite right. Mr. Hawk, Ariel knows that this place is important to you, so she wouldn't mess around. Yes, upon seeing someone sneaking in from outside, she was extremely worried, afraid that person might harm you. Ariel is in love with you so much. She gets anxious because she cares about you. Please don't blame her. After hearing their words, Brian, who had been aloof, eased a little. However, he spoke as indifferently as ever. You shouldn't come here again in the future. Ariel looked puzzled. Why? I think this place is nice. It's a waste to leave it abandoned. How about I live here in the future? As she spoke, Ariel blinked her big eyes and looked at Brian with anticipation. But Brian, who had just softened, turned indifferent again. Seeing this, Ariel's face changed. She said with grievance, Brian, did I say something wrong? Brian raised his eyes and looked at the window in my room. Suddenly, he revealed a subtly provocative smile. Then, he deliberately pulled Ariel into his arms and gently said, No. I just think you deserve to live in a better place. This place is too shabby. If you want to stay somewhere, you should stay at the Hawk family's manor. Brian held Ariel in his arms, his gaze fixed on the window of my room, as if hoping I would see the scene through the glass. Ariel smiled happily. Really? Will you allow me to stay at the Hawk family's manor? The Hawk family's manor had always been resided in by the Hawk family. Only members of the Hawk family were qualified to be there. Brian nodded. Of course. You are so obedient anyway. Before Ariel could say anything, Brian continued, This place is my private restricted area. If it weren't for your sake today, none of your bodyguards and best friends would leave here alive. Brian's words sounded light and casual, but they startled everyone at the scene. They knew Brian was decisive. He always kept his word. As the bodyguards and her best friends stared in fright, Ariel clung tightly to Brian. I knew you loved me the most. Brian smiled slightly and whispered in Ariel's ear. Do you know what I like most about you? Ariel looked at Brian expectantly. What is it? Brian gently lifted Ariel's chin with his hand and kissed her deeply and affectionately. I love it the most when you say you love me with this face. Brian's sudden kiss and confession made Ariel's face instantly blush. Oh, by the way. She suddenly realized something. A gleam flashed in her eyes. She walked briskly to my front, dragged my corpse to Brian, and proudly said, Baby, it's this plastic surgery woman who sneaked into the villa. I killed her for you. I lay on the ground lifelessly. My hair was burned off. My scalp was covered in scars. My face was swollen beyond recognition. Bloodstains were all over my body. I was disfigured. Blood flowed from the part where my tongue had been cut off, making the scene even more horrifying. Brian didn't recognize me. He looked at me with great disgust, as if he had seen something dirty. He studied me for a moment, then turned to Ariel. With indulgence and praise, he said, You taught her a good lesson. But don't personally take action in these matters in the future. If you hurt yourself, I will feel heartbroken. Especially your face. Brian gently touched Ariel's face, his gaze full of affection and admiration, as if she were his most treasured possession. After saying that, he didn't look at me again. He turned to his bodyguards and ordered, Go outside. Dig a hole and bury the body. Don't make a mess in my yard. The two bodyguards obeyed and quickly dragged my body away. Brian glanced at the window of my room. He probably didn't see the one he wanted to see. Growing impatient, he dialed a number and gave an instruction. Bring the food from the car. Soon, his driver arrived, carrying several insulated boxes. Brian placed dishes on a table in the courtyard, one by one. Each dish was carefully prepared, all of them made according to my taste. Seeing this, Ariel was overjoyed and touched. Brian, you are so good to me. You even specially prepared food for me. Brian glanced at my window and deliberately raised his voice. You worked hard educating someone today. I feel sorry for you. Then, he lovingly fed Ariel a bite of food. Although Brian had always doted on Ariel, this was the first time he had made such an intimate move. Ariel, surprised and overwhelmed, shyly chewed and swallowed the food. Her best friends, watching the scene, sighed enviously. You see? I told you. Ariel is exhausted from educating others, and Mr. Hawk feels sorry for her. I envy Ariel. She's so lucky to have met such an affectionate and dedicated man. Yes. That shameless plastic surgery woman just now wanted to seduce Mr. Hawk. How ridiculous that she even dared to dream about it. In my opinion, no one in this world can replace Ariel in Mr. Hawk's heart. As everyone gazed at them with admiration, Brian continued feeding Ariel bite by bite until she was full. Ariel was beaming with joy. But Brian grew increasingly absent-minded, occasionally glancing at the window. He had done all of this so I could see it, to make me jealous. Mr. Hawk, we buried the body. The two bodyguards returned and respectfully reported to him. Seeing no movement from the villa, Brian stood up. He deliberately spoke loudly towards the window. Ariel, I will take you to the Hawk family's manor now. If you like it, you can move in today. Hearing this, Ariel was thrilled. She quickly held Brian's arm. Okay, let's go quickly. I can't wait to live with you. Brian walked out of the courtyard under Ariel's urging. He turned his head from time to time, but he never saw my figure. The feeling of being ignored made Brian's expression darken with anger. Suddenly, his face changed. He stopped. Shaking off Ariel's hand, he turned around and walked toward the villa. Once inside, he quickly opened the door to my room. Don't you care? Brian stopped mid-sentence. The room was empty. His frown deepened as he searched every corner of the villa, unwilling to give up. But I was nowhere to be found. Brian walked back outside, his gaze fixed on Ariel. His voice was filled with barely suppressed anger. Where is the woman in this villa? It seemed like he was on the verge of losing control. Ariel widened her eyes in confusion. Who are you talking about? Besides that bitch who had plastic surgery to make herself look like me, I didn't see anyone else in the villa. Hearing this, Brian suddenly looked murderous. A plastic surgery woman to make herself look like you? Are you saying that person just now looks a lot like you? Ariel didn't care as she said, yeah. That's why I taught her a lesson. That bitch knew you liked me. She deliberately had plastic surgery to make herself look like me. She tried to seduce you and replace me. She delusionally claims to be your wife. Isn't that ridiculous? After saying that, Ariel deliberately chuckled. At this moment, Brian looked as gloomy as he could be. He suddenly moved forward, grabbing the collars of the bodyguards who had buried my body. Where did you bury the person? The bodyguards were scared. They pointed outside the courtyard, fumblingly saying, in the wasteland on the right side of the villa. Hearing this, Brian ran towards the outside as if he were crazy. Brian, where are you going? Ariel shouted in confusion. Stepping forward, she followed closely behind. Her few best friends and bodyguards ran along with her quickly. Brian, who had always been calm and stable, was like a mad bull at this moment. He was rushing and running at high speed. He went straight to the wasteland that the bodyguards had mentioned and saw a newly set-up grave. Immediately, he bent down and crazily dug the soil with his hands. His eyes were bloodshot. He looked anxious. He was digging so fast. Following closely behind, Ariel saw this scene and expressed her dissatisfaction. Brian, what does it mean for you to hurriedly come over and dig this bitch's grave? Do you care about her only? Didn't you say you love me only? Facing Ariel's questioning, he ignored her. He seemed to be possessed, digging the grave frantically. Even though his hands were bleeding, he didn't pause. Ariel couldn't put up with being ignored. She stepped forward quickly and continued. Brian, please wake up. I am your lover. Have you ever considered my feelings when you care so much about this despicable bitch? How is this bitch better than me? Ariel's friends stood up for her. Yes, Mr. Hawk, this woman just had some plastic surgery to make herself look a bit like Ariel, but she is ultimately a low-class counterfeit. Please, you must not hurt Ariel's feelings for someone like her. Yes, this bitch deliberately made herself look like Ariel to seduce you. Don't fall for her tricks. She is arrogant and boastful, thinking that she looks somewhat like Ariel. She even dares to say that Ariel is just her substitute, trying to sow discord between you and Ariel. Being such a boastful and despicable person, she deserves to die. They were indignant one by one, criticizing me for my faults. Brian focused on digging my grave. He had no intention of paying attention to them. When his hands were covered in blood, I was dug out. Brian picked me up, wiping the blood and dirt off my face. Upon seeing my appearance, he immediately shouted at the two bodyguards. Call an ambulance now. Hearing this, one of the bodyguards stepped forward and advised him, Mr. Hawk, she is dead. As soon as he finished speaking, Brian took out a dagger and ruthlessly stabbed it into his chest. Looking ferocious, he said, Who said she's dead? Without my permission, she couldn't die. In a certain private hospital's emergency room, all the top medical experts across the country were here. They all frowned, looking worried. Meanwhile, Brian stood outside the emergency room, never leaving. Behind him, there were Ariel and her best friends. A surgical expert came out of the emergency room and shook his head at Brian. Mr. Hawk, she is dead. Before the surgical expert could finish his words, Brian grabbed his head and slammed it hard against the wall. I said I would protect her for a lifetime. How could she have possibly died? Since she dies, none of you can live. Facing Brian's pressure, the surgical expert wiped the blood off his head and fumblingly went back to the emergency room to continue the rescue. Seeing Brian like this, several of Ariel's best friends frowned and whispered in confusion. Ariel, Mr. Hawk dug her grave and urgently sent her here to save her. It seems like he cares a lot about her. Yeah. What is their relationship? Judging from Mr. Hawk's appearance, could he target us for that woman? Facing her best friends, who were worried, Ariel was proud. She confidently replied, No, Brian dotes on me to the bone. He won't treat me like that. From what it looks like now, that bitch should be a mistress Brian keeps in the villa. The mistress got into trouble, so it's normal for him to be angry. I'll coax him later. Hearing this, all her best friends were relieved. You're right. Look at Mr. Hawk. Even though he's angry, he only hits doctors and kills bodyguards. He never says anything harsh to Ariel. Yes. His obvious favoritism shows Ariel's unique position in Mr. Hawk's heart. The woman is just a lowly mistress. She isn't comparable to a single finger of Ariel. Having confirmed this, Ariel became even more confident. She couldn't help but pout, showing an aggrieved look. She weakly said to Brian, Brian, that bitch had been constantly trying to sow discord between us. She said that she was your wife, and I was her substitute. I had them teach her a lesson. Who knew she would die so soon after a few moves? I did it because I was too afraid of losing you. Brian, you won't blame me, will you? Hearing this, Brian turned his head. He looked at Ariel indifferently, without saying a word. Seeing that he didn't speak, Ariel shook Brian's hand in a coquettish manner. She continued saying, Brian, I know you love me so much, but not everyone who looks like me is me. Now that you have me, there's no need to keep this kind of lowly counterfeit. I will satisfy all your needs. Since this bitch is dead, I will forgive you this time. From now on, let's be together. Don't make me sad again. Ariel thought that she had spoken generously and decently. In her opinion, Brian should be deeply moved. But Brian looked expressionless. He reached out his hand and gently touched Ariel's face, saying gently, Ariel, there is something I forgot to tell you. Estelle is my true love as well as my wife. Brian spoke gently, but his words were like a heavy blow, causing Ariel to stagger back. Ariel's face turned pale. Her girlfriends were even more frightened, trembling. They spoke one after another. Mr. Hawk, we didn't know she was Mrs. Hawk. Otherwise, we wouldn't have dared to touch her, however bold we were. Yes, Mr. Hawk. Everything was done at Ariel's request. We stripped Mrs. Hawk's clothes, burned her hair, and cut her tongue. We ordered the bodyguards to torture Mrs. Hawk to death. All of these were Ariel's ideas. It has nothing to do with us. If you want to blame someone, blame Ariel. We are innocent. Ariel's close friends, who were originally united with her, instantly turned against her. Facing the betrayal of her close friends, Ariel's eyes turned red with anger. You bitches. When you were beating her, you were all so happy. Now that something happened, you're trying to shift the blame, right? With your despicable behavior, you were born to be nothing but slaves. Her close friends were unwilling to admit defeat, saying, and what about you? Who the hell are you? Yeah. You're not someone that Mr. Hawk loves to his bones. In the end, you're just a substitute. The sole reason you caught Mr. Hawk's attention is because of Mrs. Hawk's influence. You, a damned substitute, tortured and killed Mrs. Hawk, the real hostess. Do you think you deserve to live? They argued relentlessly, mercilessly belittling each other. They were unaware that Brian's eyes had turned bloodshot. The rescue lasted the entire night. Brian stood motionlessly outside the door the entire night. It wasn't until the next morning that the door of the rescue room slowly opened. Right after that, the expert doctors came out of the rescue room. Then their faces changed. Outside the door, Brian was like a demon, covered in blood. His eyes were bloodshot. He looked haggard. Under his feet, the bodies of Ariel and others were piled up in a disorderly manner. Each of them died a gruesome death. They didn't die in peace. It seemed like they had suffered immense pain before their death. Seeing this, all the doctors fell to their knees trembling. They said, Mr. Hawk, she is dead. We indeed can do nothing. At this moment, they were filled with extreme fear. They were afraid that they would become a lifeless body on the ground in the next second. Brian didn't even glance at them, striding past them indifferently and entering the emergency room. He came to the bedside and gently touched my pale face. Judging from his gentle care and cautious movements, he seemed to be caressing his most cherished treasure. Then, he gently picked me up and walked slowly to the window. Facing the wind, he looked at me tenderly. Estelle, I promised that I would always protect you. No matter where you are, I will be with you. After saying that, he held my lifeless body and jumped out of the window from the 18th floor. He leaped down. The end.